I think I have pretty much Sunil, Chandru, and Manish. Manish, can I request you to please put on your video, please?
Hi, Rakesh.
Hi, Chandru, can you hear me? Hi, Sunil, can you hear me?
Yeah. Rakesh, I can hear you loud and clear. So
Right.
Good afternoon to you, Rakesh, and good afternoon, Mr. Chandrasekhar. This is Sunil Syal. I hope you can hear me and perhaps see me as well.
Yes, I can see you and hear you, Sunil. Very good meeting you today.
Yeah.
Very nice.
My
and
pleasure.
Once again, very good afternoon. I'm just checking, Manish, it is working for you. I can't hear you. So I'm not sure, Manish, can you hear us? We can't see you or hear you, Manish. Just give me a second. I'm just checking that hopefully it's all logged in fine. Seems to be some challenge with Manish. We'll just give him a minute or so. We'll start the conversation, and I'm requesting the assistant team to check from the back end what's the challenge, why he's not able to be on. I can see his name pretty much popping here, but may not be able to see his, hear him or see him on the screen. Very nice. So let's build the discussion ahead. I think once again, very good afternoon, each one of you, and taking your time out for this discussion. I think it's a great opportunity to hear some insights, perspectives from a finance leadership point of view. And I think what a panel which I have. I think all three of you really bring the kind of experience which is put together is more than 100+ years of experience, and that too in finance space, and leading organization as a CFOs, it matters a lot. Right? Having said that, today we want to ask some tough questions, hear some of your perspectives, so that many contemporary leaders as well as many budding finance leaders, they're also able to learn and take a lot from here when they are going back to their work, and they can apply some of these learnings what they hear today. So a couple of quick points from the rules point of view. I know the audience which were continuing the last panel, they are continuing here, but as you know, you have a facility as a Q&A here, and you can ask any questions. If you want to ask a panelist, please put your questions in the Q&A. We can't see you, you can see us very clearly. The second one, I think, is there's a polls. So in between, there'll be a poll which will come, and I will trigger that poll, and you can obviously respond to the poll. And in the last of the session, as we complete, I will be able to share a link which you can copy and click on the link to download the research report which we were talking about in the earlier panel. So that's quickly from the audience point of view. From the panelists, which we have Mr. Sunil Syal. Mr. Sunil Syal is regional CFO Nokia, a veteran finance leader, and he also is a president of Shared Services Forum, and he has been very instrumental in terms of some of the journey of Shared Services Forum over the last few years. As you know, Shared Services Forum, it's a 10th year, and from the journey point of view for us, we started way back in 2011, and Sunil has been pretty much a part of that journey along with the Shared Services Forum. Mr. T. Chandrasekhar, I welcome you, and Mr. T. Chandrasekhar is one of the, if I can say, leaders who have been associated again with Shared Services Forum in multiple avatars. Obviously, as an industry leader, as a finance leader, as being with his IBM as a CFO, where he has shared a lot of insights in the past when he has come on the panels. And also, he is one of the esteemed jury panel members for the Excellence Awards and recognition for the Shared Services Forum. Today, both of you, in the capacity of being a finance professional, finance leader, and a veteran finance leader, I will be requesting for your insights. I'm unsure still, Manish, are you able to hear us? You're able to join. I can see you on a screen as a box, but not able to hear you. It seems to be on a mute, Manish. If you are there, please unmute yourself. No, I think Manish is still struggling. I'm requesting the SSF team at the back end to check for him, please. And this slideshow can be taken out. So I just move on to just building on the panel topic itself. The panel topic is very, very simple. We talked about as a finance leader, are you under stress? And why I'm asking this question is why I'm asking this question from the perspective of saying, are you under pressure? Is because of this whole COVID, the unprecedented time, the way it has the change, the way it has really become difficult. How are you handling that stress? How are you handling that pressure is what we would like to understand. What few things which you have done to manage that stress. You might have managed it or you are still struggling with that stress. We are just trying to hear that. So I would start with maybe Sunil, you first. If you can just share some of your experiences of the current time, very briefly in a couple of minutes, by saying, how are you going through the stress, what has been, and are you out of that stress or are you still into the stress?
Thank you, Rakesh. So when you say stress, so I am actually not sure whether there have been periods when finance professionals generally have not been under stress, whether times good or bad. I think some kind of pressure, whether you may want to call it stress or not, I don't know, but some kind of pressure I think is always there during times which are good and during times which are perhaps not so good as well. However, when it comes to the present crisis, which as you very rightly described, in your earlier conversation as well, I mean, as far as the present crisis is concerned, this is something where I think almost the entire population, whether it was finance professionals or any other professional, kind of got it all wrong. When I say we got it all wrong, what I mean is that all kinds of estimates, guesstimates, projections, what would happen, what can happen, what cannot happen. I mean, we have never been able to come to terms with it. So as I was saying to a friend of mine yesterday, I mean, these are times when things are continuously evolving and we have to resolve as they evolve. So there is no time period between something happening and resolution expected of that particular event. So definitely, I mean, these are times which are stressful for all professionals. I would say perhaps more so for the finance professionals. You could say that being a finance professional myself, I am a bit biased, but yes, I think there are a couple of professions who actually have an end-to-end view. And if you have an end-to-end view, then obviously the stress which you feel or which you can kind of at least see is something which puts a lot of pressure on you. So if you were to ask me a simple question, Rakesh, as you just did, are you under stress? Well, yes, we are. However, I think over the past 3-4 months, what we have learned is that we will have to live with this stress. So when things become inevitable, then you have to find, ways and means to be able to, maneuver or find your way through the, difficulties and the constraints we have. And since this was a short question where I was meant to give you a short answer, so that's where I would currently stop now. But
I think you made a very good point, Sunil. I think the two parts, if I can hear you correctly. One, I think you rightly said that which year in the finance professional's life you don't have the stress. So I think obviously you rightly said that there is always an element of a stress which is built as a part of the professional life. You opted for it, the occupational hazard, if I can use the word. But the current time, which is an unprecedented time, has certainly added more to it. And I really like that comment, and I'd like to come back to you in a minute after hearing Mr. Chandrasekhar's input, where you said, to be honest, we were not even prepared for it, right? So I would come back to you, and I know there's a very interesting response which you will have to share with us as well. But before that, Mr. Chandrasekhar, just wanted to hear from you. How do you see this perspective of being in stress, being in, under the pressure in the current situation as a finance figure?
Yeah, Rakesh and everybody, first of all, thanks for having me on the panel. And Sunil, thank you for your opening inputs as well. What I'm going to say is kind of different from what you heard from Sunil. I actually don't feel stress at all. And here's why I say this. I'll start with an anecdote. Back in, not an anecdote, it happened back in early February when we were doing planning for our March 2020 statutory audit closing and all of that. What we do is we have a planning meeting with our auditors to make sure that we're all calibrated on what we need, how we need it. And many of you heard this story from me before. The way we operate in finance in IBM, for example, is that we are a globally integrated enterprise, which means I have 3 accountants in India, I have 5 accountants in Kuala Lumpur, I have my fixed assets being run from somewhere in Europe, and I have my intercompany accounting in the US and so on. So we have multiple people. So in any case, we're all working very remotely from each other from an accounting standpoint. So in early February, when we had this planning meeting, my point to the auditors was, and the auditors were not obviously as ready as we were in terms of how we were working from home and all of that, which IBM, as many of you know, is very used to, and we've been doing it for many, many years. I said to them, be ready to not be able to show up in office at all. Be ready to do all of the work sitting from home, from in front of your computer. So there will be no physical interaction. There'll be no physical document that you'll be able to see. Everything will be digital. Everything will come on your computer screen, and you will not be able to see it with your own eyes. Let's all assume that is going to be the worst case scenario. Let's assume that we won't be able to get into the office. And this was early February, and I don't know. They say in Tamil, right? You have a black tongue, and you shouldn't have said that, and actually happened. So it actually happened, right? And we were having some discussions the other day with the auditors, and they said, I should have listened to you, and I should have told this to my other clients, and many of them were not as prepared as you are. So the point I'm making, Rakesh, is that I think we in IBM have been a lot more prepared than many others, partly because of the way we work. And when on the 16th of March, when we formally announced that we'll work from home until further orders, right? Even today, we're working from home. And you may have read in the papers also that 99% of IBM employees, and we have a significant headcount population in India. So 99% of our headcount are working from home even today. And within finance, 100% has been working from home from day one. And we actually didn't have a problem with that at all. I think the stress that I see going around is what happens to the business, the uncertainty that is there in the business, and therefore how we in finance need to react to that, whether it is from a cash standpoint or whether it is from a business standpoint, whether it's from a financial metric standpoint, and more importantly, from my standpoint, how do we continue to manage people, right? Working from home casually for a couple of days in a week is one thing, and working from home for a very, very long period. As I said, I've been working from home. This is completed 4 months from home already. So that's a entirely different thing. I don't think my wife expected it. I think the stress is a lot more on my family than on me right now. But yes, we have managed it so far. I think we can manage it going forward. But there are many things, including employee well-being and many of the engagement-related activities, and how we do it, and how we adapt to the new normal, as Sunil put it, and be able to take it in our stride and move on with it is something that we got to continue working on.
Sure. So I think I just build on some of this conversation. I'll come back to you, Mr. Chandrasekhar. I can see Manish, you are there. Manish, if you can just unmute yourself. Yeah, Manish.
Rakesh, am I visible and audible now?
Absolutely, Manish. Welcome to this panel. I think
there was some technological challenge which I surpassed and came back.
So nice of you, and thank you for being part of this panel, Manish. So we just started a few minutes back, and we're trying to hear a very brief comment in terms of, and I started with the question by saying, very eminent panel, but I'm going to be a little tough with you all today, trying to ask and get some perspective, which is going to be useful for the people who are logged in to listen through this conversation. So the question was, are you under stress? Are you under pressure today? And I think one very interesting comment from Sunil, which came in the beginning was, tell me one day or a year where we are not as a finance professional. But this time is very different, unprecedented. While we heard a very different perspective from Mr. Chandrasekhar saying that as a company, they were better prepared. And hence, there is a stress, but they were able to manage it because of the nature of the company, the kind of work they do, and the kind of preparation the company had. Now, in your case, do you have an 8 hours a day, or are you struggling to be stressed across multiple dimensions? So, how about you, Manish?
So, first of all, thanks for having me here, and it's a great pleasure to be part of this panel. As I was discussing with you, Rakesh, a few days ago, that as far as finance people are concerned, whether they are under stress or not under stress, without the COVID or without this type of once in a century type of crisis, depends more so on the personality trait, which is a softer skill of that individual. But yes, the part of it is contributed by the nature of business as well. A lot of companies, I have complete empathy with the CFO of PVR, where there is virtually no top line, zero top line, what to speak of doing any cost optimization or whatever. Coming back specifically to our industry, we are part of the infra space. We are into mining of coal and various natural minerals. Coal is an integral part for the India's power needs. India was growing at 7-8% for past few years. And from a power deficit country to a power surplus country, which currently most of the part of the country receives more than 20 hours of electricity. And we were playing a small bit of role in that. As far as Rajasthan and Odisha is concerned, we contribute coal to the power producers of these respective states. So from a nature of business point of view, our business was not shut even for a single day during this COVID, starting from 23rd of March, 22nd of March to be precise, from that Janta curfew onwards. But it gave us two different type of challenges. Power industry itself is in financial stress. They had been giving very poor as far as collections are concerned. During this COVID, when government took a little bit of time to understand how do they have to go about it, their collections even became more pathetic, whereas our vendors were wanting us to support them. So I had a double whammy, that how do I go about using my past profitability and the cash which I have, how do I prioritize it? So from that point of view, if I had to get stressed, I would have got stressed, and whatever little hairs are left on my head, I would have gone completely bald. But I think being heavy, I must admit that no stress becomes so much for me that I lose my smile. That is a natural trait of my personality. But yes, from a business perspective, even if it is an infra space, this calamity, pandemic, whatever we may call it, is neither heard of. It's 1 in 100 years. When I was Googling the history, I understood that 1918 India was hit with the Spanish flu, wherein that was a decade where India lost 6% of its population. There was no other decade where India's population took a declining trend. Definitely, it will have an impact on all aspects of economy, whichever part of the business cycle you are in. We are a growth-oriented organization. Yes, we are hungry for cash. Whether it is working capital cycle or it is a capex cycle. So what we decided that we will go a little slow on the capex cycle, but we neither got rid of any of our employees. We did not reduce the salary of any of our employees. Yes, we may have been very conservative as far as giving increments are concerned, but we took care of all the employees. People were given liberty to, where if they feel comfortable to work from home, they can continue to work from home. Initially, yes, for 1.5 months, roughly till end of April, there was no end to fixing of digital meetings, and they used to go on till 9:30, 10. People will send an invite at 8:30. But then I realized whether it's work from home or it is my office, I have to, as I used to define it earlier, I will define it now as well. And hence I stopped taking any meeting invites unless until it is from the chairman's office. And chairman never used to call any meeting after 8 o'clock in the night. So it is our people only who were creating chaos by being an unplanned person. So if you want to be planned, other persons being unplanned, being his deciding at the last minute cannot impact me. He can continue to remain with his being unplanned. So it has not impacted me as far as my delivery is concerned. I had board meetings of 16 companies in the business which I take care, all digital, in which I had to convince my state power producer because their representatives are on the board of 1 or 2 of companies. They were experiencing for the first time how to hold a board meeting through electronic mode. But we had to do it because they are a subsidiary of Adani Enterprises Limited. And if I don't hold their board meetings, Adani Enterprises Limited will have to postpone their board meeting. So none of that had to happen. We revised our budget for 2021 2 times. It was already finalized before COVID hit us. But we went on the design drawing board once again, looking at the current cash situation. And we had to completely redraw it completely as if this was a first time discussion going to happen. So we had to do all that. There was a lot of online recruitment taking place. So it was a challenging time and it continues.
Yeah, so Manisha, very nice, I think. So interesting perspective, I think, which you're sharing in terms of initially you had from an individual point of view, or personally, you had a bit of a stress because of the work hours and the way you managed it. And you rightly talked about in terms of how the whole change happened, how the people adopted this whole digital way, including the board meetings and not just limiting to your remit, but even you were able to influence, or you got the partnership to work with many others where this digital work really worked in the last 2 months of time. Just building the conversation ahead, and I just want to go back to Sunil, to look at from the this whole the perspective we talked about. Nothing is not a single day is where we don't have the kind of a challenge, and obviously the last few months has been something which is absolutely unprecedented. 2 quick points which is coming out, and I would like to hear your perspective on that. One is that the nature of business obviously plays a role, and given you are a manufacturing, infra kind of an organization, what was the kind of impact which you as a CFO had to go through in this kind of situation, including in terms of people well-being, etc., and the manufacturing had to happen? That is one part. The second part, if you can also further build on it, we're saying what are the few things which you did to come out of that situation, if you have come out of that situation, of individual, if I can say, as a crisis. As a company is one part, as an organization is one part. My question is more from the finance leader point of view. And what's the kind of a learning or perspective would you like to provide to other people who are logged into this call by saying this is the kind of areas where we were able to come out of it? So over to you, Sunil.
Okay, so thank you, Rakesh. So first of all, before I answer this particular question, I would first want to maybe build a bridge between what I said and what my fellow panelists also talked about stress, and then I'll kind of link it to the question which you asked me. So when you look at the holistic functions which we as CFOs perform, I mean, I'm sure there is no rocket science that we have. Can you hear me?
Yeah, thanks, Sunil. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, so because there was a bit of a disturbance there, so I thought that maybe I had lost all of you. But so if I were to look at the various functions which we perform, so rather than going through the whole lot of functions which we do, let me try and divide them into 2 parts. The internal facing ones and the external facing ones, in the interest of time. So some of the functions which Mr. Chandrasekhar touched upon, I would classify them as internal facing ones. Getting the accounts ready, getting the audits done, getting the quarterly results done, And similarly, some of the areas which Mr. Saxena also pointed out were with regard to holding of board meetings, etc., which are kind of more process, procedure, logistics, related stuff. And there, I think, is not where what I was alluding to or referring to. These are functions which can happen quite easily in era which is working from home or working from office, COVID, non-COVID, and so on and so forth. Organizations like IBMs and Nokia's of the world have got have the luxury of having some very fantastic systems, fantastic connections which are available. Everybody has a laptop. They're all connected, and all these things can happen anywhere in the world. So I mean, it was not a surprise for me that all companies like ours were able to publish their quarterly results for the quarter which had just gone by spot on time, which basically meant that the systems worked all over the world, not only in India but all over the world. But what I was alluding to was the external facing role of a CFO. So when I say an external facing role of a CFO, what I mean is our customers, our vendors, our manufacturing facilities. That is where the challenge comes in, and that is where the stress would start to build up. So now I will link this to the question which you asked about the manufacturing facility. Now let me give you an example. We have a state-of-the-art manufacturing facility in Chennai where we have 1,500 people working there. And we thought, well, yes, when the lockdown happened, that we will be covered, and rightly so, under the essential services arena, because we manufacture telecom equipment, and telecom was classified as an essential service. So in our planning, what we thought was, well, yes, we may not be able to do a 3-shift manufacturing, but at least we will be able to do a 1 or a 1.5 shift manufacturing. And we had our BCP drawn around that. So there was already an existing BCP. We kind of put it into motion, saying, well, yes, we will have now a 2-shift operation. So what we will do is that we will use all the manufacturing facility for consumption in the domestic market, and as far as exports is concerned, we will shift to a plan B, where the production can be ramped up in some other part of the world where perhaps the lockdown was not as strict as it was in India during the month of March and April and the initial couple of months. But then, I mean, the vagaries of this particular calamity were such that each state, as you know, Rakesh, along with the federal government, would come out with advisories almost on an hourly basis. So there was a federal advisory, then there was advisory from the Tamil Nadu government, then there was some advisory from the Chennai municipality, and trying to kind of trying to comply to all those meant that the challenge which we kind of foresaw and planned was much more. So although we put into operation a BCP plan whereby we said, well, yes, instead of 10 people coming in a van from various villages or various towns all over Chennai, we would have perhaps only 5 or 6 people sitting in a particular van. We would have certain entry protocols, we would have certain exit protocols, but who knew that all of a sudden on the 28th of whatever April, the Chennai government would say, or the Tamil Nadu government would say, that the factory would now be, the state would now be locked down for another 4 or 5 days. And the factories, if you know, Rakesh, are not simplistic pieces of infrastructure where you just push a button and the whole factory starts to run. Shutting the factory is very easy, but setting it back in motion, there is a lead time of about 4 to 5 days. So this off and on which happened was something which we obviously could not have planned in any of our BCPs. And then I will just take a couple of more minutes, Rakesh. Then when we found that, well, yes, this was taking too much of too much of our time, and we will not be able to service the customers. And if we are not able to service the customers, then obviously, I mean, the top line suffers, and then if the top line suffers, the bottom line is also going to suffer. And if I would say that I would have no stress, even if my bottom line suffers, then I think I would not be justifying. I would not be justified. So what we thought was, well, fine, even if it means an extra cost, I will put plan B in motion. And the plan B was ramp up production in our factory in China, and to be able to get equipment from China into India. Because that was one of the factories which made equipment which was similar to what was required in India. Okay, so we put plan B in motion, and we thought, well, yes, even if it needs an extra cost, we would still be able to satisfy our customers, and at least make, if not make an X percentage of sales margin, maybe an X minus Y percentage of sales margin, because of the fact that there's a transport involved, there's logistics, freight, and custom duties involved. But then who knew that all of a sudden there would be a standoff in Ladakh? Because of that standoff, there would be an anti-China sentiment. And because of that anti-China sentiment, all my imports in China would get stuck up at customs. So that is what I am meaning by stress. So on the 30th of June, we were still struggling till 12 at midnight, trying to convince the custom officers that this equipment which we are trying to import from China is actually not strictly Chinese. So that is the kind of stress I am actually talking about, and that comes into that and that comes into play, Rakesh, because we had a plan B, but we did not have a plan C. Right. So COVID has actually taught us that we will also have to have a plan C.
Sure. No, I think it's an interesting story. And so I'll just come back to you. I have a very connected question to you, and I'll just come back in a little while back to you on the specific example of plan A, B, and C. And you talked about, and a very interesting side of it. What you're saying is it's not just about looking at the finance functional role as a CFO. It's also really looking at the business role, if I can say.
Absolutely.
And this really makes a lot of difference in terms of looking at both the top line, bottom line. Not just from the, and typically we keep saying that, and just before the session we talked about also, is that it's not about just about reporting profits, it's about really generating profits, and that's where you're trying to see, or even if I can say not generating profits, but minimizing losses, if I can say, is something which you looked at. And I'll come back to your specific question. Just wanted to take a quick view from Mr. Chandrasekhar, you on this. I think 2-3 perspectives we are hearing, and I think I wanted to hear one of the areas from US. We are talking about going through a turbulent time, and it's looking. Let me just try to visualize and get all of us to visualize that. We're talking about there's a pilot, there's a co-pilot. Pilot is a business leader, the CEO, and there's a co-pilot, which is the finance leader or CFO, and they're flying a plane for a long hours. And on the mid of the air, there is a turbulence. And as Sunil was talking about, every flight you take, you'll have a bit of a turbulence, and you're used to those kind of turbulence sometimes, right? You're used to some of those crises sometimes. But there are many times, and this is the first time after a century, once in a century, as Manish was talking about it, this is one of the situations where this turbulence is there, which is unprecedented. You are flying along with your CEO. And you don't even know how long this turbulence is going to be. Your air traffic control is giving you some guesstimated news about 2 months, 3 months. There's a WHO which comes and says, okay, 3 months more, and the worse time has to come. And then ICMR in India, which is talking about, we have not seen the worst, and so on and so forth. How do you react to some of that as a finance leader, as a co-pilot now?
Yeah, so first of all, I completely relate to what Sunil said, and I think a lot of the real life incidents that he was talking about in his business is pretty much what I'm sure Manish or I or any other CFO would be able to immediately relate to. So thank you, Sunil, for bringing that up. From my standpoint, Rakesh, like I said, as the co-pilot, my job is to make sure that the pilot continues to do what he is best at, and I continue to support him. Now, these are unique situations, right? So, for example, we have some resources that have to work from an IBM office premises because they are managing a data center, or they're managing, they are working off of a client network and so on. And you obviously, because some of these are secure networks, you can't have them working from home and access those networks. So we had to enable that for them because that's how they become effective. There are cases where you have, Manish was talking about recruitment. We have recruitment ongoing. We have new resources coming on. How do I enable them with laptops so they can work on it? How do I enable them with data cards? The first month and a half obviously was very trying because all of us were trying to grapple with it. Very trying in the sense that we had to do a lot of things to make sure that our people were enabled so they could do what they could do, right? But then very quickly we realized that this is not going to go away very soon. Like all of us agree, this is a new normal, and even in the most normal of circumstances, I don't know if in the next 1-2 years we're going to have more than 50% of our people working from the office at any point in time, right? If you just have to allow 1 meter, the social distance between two individuals sitting in an office, I think you got to reduce the number of people seated by half, right? So by that simple logic, I think it is going to be a new normal that a lot of us are going to work from home for a lot of more days than ever before. One, two. There are going to be these situations like Sunil talked about the 30th June situation he spoke about on items stuck at customs, and a lot of us that manage we have hardware as well that we import. So there certainly is that problem that we've had to go through as well. But the good news is that we've worked very closely with government. We've worked very closely with our stakeholders, with the ecosystem, and we've some of it we've planned ahead. For example, I now have a stock of laptops for all of my new joinees until December 2020. I would usually not keep that kind of stock, right? I'm doing that today because on the one hand, I have new people joining, and then I do have attrition like I would have. It's a normal thing in the industry that I work for. So we have a different way of managing. Otherwise, we would normally expect that the employee that is outgoing would come, give his or her laptop back, and get a confirmation that the laptop has been returned. Of course, these are digital confirmation, and only then the final settlement happens, right? But now it's a unique situation. So we are doing it very differently, and we're not necessarily timing it to say that people have to return their laptop before they get a final settlement and so on. So we've had to change a lot of our processes. We've had to do a lot of different things from what we would do in the past. But the good news is we've been fleet-footed. We've been very fleet-footed about how we look at some of these things, how we react to some of these nuances in the business. And we also realize that this is not going to go away, and we're going to continue facing these situations on an ongoing basis. We've managed it. I would say we managed it well. It's now about sustainability and endurance and keeping the level of focus and patience that we keep. I still go back to what I originally said. To me, the single biggest concern would be the well-being of my employees. The single biggest concern will be my ability to keep them motivated and to continue enabling them to do what I think they have to do, whether it is this situation or any other. And it only gets a lot more difficult now than it ever used to be.
No, absolutely. Thanks for that point, and really talking about from the co-pilot point of view. And before I go back to and build on this conversation, I obviously wanted to take some input from you, Manish. And the question I just want to leave with you before that, I just launch a poll. The question is, in this, you talked about nature of business, and we're also talking about the kind of rules, etc., etc. Wanted to hear quickly from you, what is the role of the government in this kind of situation? What do you think is the role of industry associations in this kind of a situation? Do they play a role? Do they play an important element in terms of some of the situations you are in to de-stress or bring your pressure down? Before you respond, I have a poll for the audience, and I just released that poll. Even the panelists can please respond to it. I will request all the panelists to please respond to this poll as well. So here you go. So the question is, what is the most critical characteristics a finance professional needs to possess? And please read finance leaders here, needs to possess to be a resilient leader and effectively manage crisis. The options are clear narrative, ability to visualize the path forward. Second is fine blend of head and heart, display empathy and take tough decisions. Third is lead by example, encourage and motivate the team. Fourth, analytical mind for better predictability and improved decision making. And last but not least, ability to combine short-term efficiencies and long-term effectiveness. I know this is a little tricky question, but a lot of options. You have to select one. I request all the panelists here. I'm sure many of these, all of these you would be displaying as part of your role, but if you can just pick one of it, would be quite helpful. Another 20 seconds. Yeah. I'm close to 75% votes. Another 10 seconds. Fine. Great. So we'll just close the poll now. Thank you. So Manish, over to you now with that question which I was having just before I launched the poll, seeking your insights on it.
Yeah, so Rakesh, as I was mentioning in my opening comments, that this is a once in a century type of crisis. In my 30 years of work experience, out of which 10 years in controllership and the CFO roles, which I have been doing, yes, I had witnessed the Y2K, which was a smaller problem, but also it was impacting all entities across, right? I was having around 9 years of work experience. I was in the middle management, but that also I remember created a huge amount of, but it was known. We had time at our disposal. Some companies started 3 months in advance, some started 1 year in advance, but COVID, there was no notice, there was no advance intimation, despite the fact that China, it had struck sometime in December. But India was actually not so prepared, and or nobody thought that it will come in such a hordes the way it came through the international flights, and then it spread to the nook and corner. So yes, here at this point of time, it is not only government's responsibility to front end and take care of the people who on their own are not able to take care. Because they don't have so much deep pockets and resources that they can survive being unemployed for a longer period of time without any earnings. A large responsibility lies on the shoulders of large corporates, which I would say there have been a mixed type of response. Some companies have been very, very wholeheartedly coming out and saying that we will not deduct the salary of the people irrespective of what it may happen. Because if the company has been there for 10, 15 years, has been profitable, yes, for some months, company can sustain without doing any deduction. But there are two types of behavior which we have seen from the corporate world, wherever the top line has got impacted. Some have become very, very ruthless, and they have just reduced the manpower left, right, and center. Some companies have taken it from the heart. They have come out in open, including their promoters like Rajiv Bajaj. He came out in open and addressed at various public forums about the stance which his group has taken. Same with Tata Group. A lot of responsibility lies on the corporate shoulders, and CFOs, in my opinion, I call them as the navigators of the business, because CEO would want to take the business through a top line growth. It is the CFO who ultimately balances it out by looking at the short term and the long term, and evens out everything. And hence, this role currently has to play much more than what a passive CFO would generally be playing. We have to be very, very nimble-footed. You can't live with a plan for 6 months or 1 year, because you never know how long this crisis is going to continue. So, as the corporates have played differently this game, some have been playing with the heart, some have been playing with the mind. Same way, I would say government has also, in my opinion, played a bit of balanced role. It has tried to help the people who are the most needy through way of various schemes. Answer that, is it good enough or something more should have been done? My view is that in the economy currently was going to grow at 7-8% for the next 4-5 years. Now suddenly will degrow at 5% in FY21. It will require Herculean effort, because when the momentum suddenly stops, you just can't push it and then give it back at 8% in FY22. It requires a lot of Herculean efforts, which requires fiscal incentive. It does not require traditional monetary economics policies. It has to be out of the box. People will have to think, government administrators have to think that how do they go about. We just can't focus on the fiscal deficit percentage and govern the economy and then say, yes, be with it. We will let the long term be sacrificed for ensuring that we don't cross a threshold percentage. So this is my view on that.
Absolutely. That insight, I think it is quite helpful, Manish. And as you rightly said, this is going to be a Herculean ask, not just from the government point of view, even from the corporates. And the corporates' guidance will also change, as they would have thought very differently. The large corporates, the mid corporates, the entire ecosystem will have to really look at things differently, and even some of the associations, the industry bodies will also have to really play an important role in some of these areas. Just picking up with Mr. Chandrasekhar, given this whole, the IT, IT-enabled services kind of industry in the space, there was a big news about the overseas leaders, where the organizations were getting hassled about India with the full lockdown, and then obviously NASSCOM played an important role to pull it back and agree with the government of India in terms of how to get some of these organizations with a partial operations and so on and so forth. The question I have is now that is one role which government or associations have played. Now the situation is, we have talked about you are all under stress and how you are responding to the stress, etc. Are we seeing this situation now, just turning the tides back by saying, hey, we have shown to the world that even despite this major crisis, India was able to deal great with it. I'm just taking India as an example. I'm not saying we're just talking very India-centric here, but taking as an example. Using this as a crisis where some of the organizations have displayed their resilience and said, we are made to fight for it. Are you seeing any signs where you are using this challenge or this crisis as an opportunity back to play it back to the customers, clients, as shareholders by saying, guys, look, we are all good, we will take care of it. Are you seeing the situation has come? Are you able to reach there where you're able to play that opportunity card, or are you still too far to reach to the opportunity card?
Just to be honest, I don't think this is the time for us to, to play the opportunity card, like you said, right? I think what customers are looking for from companies such as IBM is that there will be continuity, that IBM will continue to support them in difficult times. And I can tell you that there are many clients that are not ready. Forget about vendors and service providers such as IBM. Clients are not ready and were not ready for this pandemic. So we've had to help clients not just by continuing our services, but also providing them a lot of assistance, to make sure that their business was continuing to run. It is tough, to be honest, because some of these clients did not have the infrastructure. Some other clients did not have the right set of people. Some other clients were not training their employees to work from home, and some clients work on secure networks, and therefore it's not very easy for them to move all of their work from home, right? So we've had to play this role of, on the one hand, doing what we have to do and delivering what we have to deliver to our clients without interruption. Second, enable our clients to be productive. Third, there are some critical infrastructure that we support for our clients, right? We also have data centers. We have cloud data centers that our clients use, and so on. We had to make sure, in spite of the lockdown and all of it, we had to make sure that those were running. Thankfully, the government looked at it and gave it a very positive, I would say, a very positive view, and classified IT/ITES as essential services, and that really helped us. We did go through the initial few weeks of confusion, like Sunil and Manish were alluding to as well. But then the governments, I think got a little more coordinated, and and gave us clarity, gave themselves clarity in the process, and we were able to work through it. Our clients understand that there may be situations where we are not as responsive as they think we should be, and some of it is simply because there are requirements that are unique, right? And they get done better from an office premises, and the typical plan A, plan B, plan C that we worked on from a BCP standpoint used to be, if Bangalore shuts down, can I move some of my work to Pune? If Pune shuts down, can I move it to Kolkata? If India shuts down, can I move it to Philippines? If Asia shuts down, can I move it to Latin America? All of that is now broken, right? You can't go anywhere because the whole world is struggling. And there's no country that is struggling less than the other, right? It's only a question of the degree of impact, and different countries have different degrees, I guess. But therefore our clients understand. We understand. We've been very fortunate to have some very understanding clients who have responded very positively to our request, and we've I would say that we've managed through this situation up to this point really well. I think it'll be a good benchmark for us to see how we can improve from here, knowing fairly well that this is not going to go away in the next few weeks or months even, right? So short answer, it's been a new learning for all of us, and thankfully we've gone through it. We'll continue to go through it, and we'll continue to adapt to it.
Sure. I hear you, absolutely. So thanks for that insights, Mr. Chandrasekhar. Just taking a quick 1 minute. I know we are in the last 5-7 minutes of the session. Sharing the results of the poll, and I'll just leave it on the screen for you all to just see it. And this is where I would like to spend a quick minute, and I just request all of you to be very brief in your responses. 2 quick questions I have for all of you, and then you can just do a quick round robin and 30-second responses if I request all of you to give. Starting with you, Manish, how do you see the responses of this poll?
Yeah, if we see the responses, it says analytical mind for better predictability has got the highest score at 40%. And then ability to combine has got the second highest as 20%. I had voted for something else.
What is
Yeah.
your take? Yeah.
Yeah. So I voted for this head and heart thing because I find that when we are in abnormal situation and you are not in a position to use data points to decide what needs to be done, because you don't know how long this pandemic is going to go, and you have people in your organization within finance, outside finance. As I am holding this conference with you, two of my teammates in Ahmedabad have been tested positive. So, and the entire team has to be quarantined now because that is the protocol in Ahmedabad as per the Gujarat government. So it has to be an extremely fine balance. Generally, finance people tend to have, because of the virtue of the DOA or whatever, or by virtue of what the institute says that there are many a slip between the cup and the lip. We have a tendency to of saying power to say no. We use data and we say that God we believe in, rest has to be supported by data. But these are very, very difficult times. I have to be much more emotional than what I used to be earlier. And hence I felt that I have to blend my head as well as heart, display empathy and take tough decisions as well. Very difficult to be executed, but this is one of the finest skills will be required by all the finance fraternity leaders.
Yeah, thanks, Manish. Very quick comments from you, Sunil and Mr. Chandrasekhar. How do you see this? How can you see this? Can you see this poll results? And what would be your pick?
So first of all, I must say, Rakesh, I think you have been a bit unfair to the audience. I mean, how can you ask the audience to pick one out of the five? I think all of them are extremely important. It all depends upon which particular stage of the battle are you in, right? What industry are you in? What circumstances are you in? What geography are you in? I mean, so to be able to kind of pick one out of all these 5 or 6, I think is a bit difficult. However, I did pick, since I didn't have a choice, so I did try to kind of click 2, but I think you had drafted it well, so it would take only 1. So I did pick exactly the same which Manish picked up, which was that we need to think both from the head and the heart, because crises like these cannot be kind of addressed. If I may use the word address, I don't think we are even addressing it. We're just trying to sustain somehow. So crises like these can be sustained only if we have a good combination of the head and the heart, and we know where to give precedence to the head and where to give precedence to the heart. I think that is what is extremely important. Since you gave me only 30 seconds, so I will now share.
I think absolutely have to run it rapid fire. Mr. Chandrasekhar, your comments on this.
Firstly, I love the term integrity, and in all honesty, let me tell you, I've not spoken to Sunil before. I've not spoken to Manish before. I picked exactly the same, item that they two picked. I think it's a very profound statement, right? A fine blend of head and heart. You think about it. Manish put it extremely well. This is not the time to throw data. This is not the time to lean on statistic, because no statistic, no data, no history is going to help us in a situation like this, right? You just have to be very, very fleet-footed and pick your battles. Do what you think is right, and of course, with the right level of discussion, conversation within the leadership. Just do what you all think is right at the moment, right? There are a lot of decisions I'm sure each one of us as CFOs has taken over the last 4 months, which is very different from the way we would have reacted in peacetime, right? I always say this, right? There's a lot of things that you will do in peacetime. The same situations in wartime you will do very differently. I think this is wartime. And you got to think very, very quickly. I tend to agree with Manish, Sunil, everything they said, and I would say that at this time the best thing to do is to listen to your heart first, do what is right for your people, enable them, make sure that the business is enabled, make sure that our teams are enabled. And like Manish said, so if you do have an employee or his or her family member having got impacted because of this pandemic, the least one can do is empathy, right? The least one can do is to make sure that person gets what he or she needs to to take care of the person's health and well-being. So I would say that first, and the head, right? Take the tough decisions, and the tough decisions can always in hindsight be questioned by oneself, right? We got to learn as we go. But do not hesitate to take the tough decisions, but take the tough decisions with a kind heart is what I would say.
So I think this was fantastic. Does it mean, and I'm just extending the session by just 2 more minutes because I want to take a quick rapid fire among all three of you. Literally rapid fire, if you can really stick to 10, 20 seconds of the responses will be helpful. Does it mean that the responses from the poll as we see, there is somewhere that opportunity for the finance leaders, if they really want to become resilient in this time, they really want to take a larger role and play some of the roles which you leaders are playing today, they need to think differently. So quick advices for the budding leaders. Very quickly, 1 or 2 bullets, something which comes in your mind by saying, these are quick advices to the budding leaders, the budding CFOs or the budding finance leaders. I'll just go, Manish, you first. Very brief, Manish, very brief, 10 seconds.
Yeah, so I don't say that this is an advice. I would say I'm sharing my experience. This is a very, very uncertain time. Be nimble-footed. And this is going to people who will, I'm in the last 10 overs of my 2020 match. I am playing on the front foot. People who have 20 more years to go to complete their corporate innings will, and they come out successful. There will be lots of learnings in the individual capacities. I think one of the most important learning is dealing with heart. Finance people have very, very heavy heart. Get a very nimble-footed approach to decision-making. Yes, use technology, but I think you will have to use more of your heart. Be nimble-footed. You will find the success coming your way.
Thanks, Manish. Sunil.
Okay. So basically, 2 things if you are asking me for advice. So one is, I would say speed over elegance, Rakesh, or in other words, action over perfection. That is the first thing which I would want to say, because during our initial phases of life, we are all taught to be perfect, but that is not what that is something which we learn over time, that it is fine to be a little bit imperfect as well. Nothing wrong with it, but what is important is speed and action. That is one. And the second thing is that if you have to really move on to a bigger role, then you will have to start looking at the bigger picture. So this pandemic for us CFOs or as accountants is not about a good statutory close. It's not about declaring our financial results. It is about ensuring that all parts of the organization, be it and all stakeholders, be it vendors, be it customers, be it employees, be it investors, be it your bankers, you have to have a vision which kind of runs across all 5 stakeholders, and you make sure that you work totally aligned and in tandem with all of them.
Yeah.
You haven't given me enough time, but I hope the message is clear.
Yeah, and I think absolutely very loud and clear, Sunil. Thanks for that message. Mr. Chandrasekhar, quick advice from you for the budding.
Yeah. This is what I tell my team, and I will tell every CFO and every other peer on this meeting. Call up 5 of your colleagues, right? It need not be your direct reports. Call up 5 of your colleagues. Do not necessarily talk to them about work or transaction. Just inquire about their well-being. Just inquire about the well-being of their immediate family members or their friends and family. and please request them to do so as well, right? The cascading impact of this will be huge, right? Just touching people, telling them that we're all in it together. This shall pass. We will learn to live with it, and life will come back to normal. And exactly what Manish said, right? We are in the last few overs of our innings, so to speak, and we have little to lose at this time. But there are people that have a long career and a long innings ahead, and it's absolutely important that they get confidence that they will be able to swim through this with all the guidance that they can get and all the support that we can provide to them. That would be my advice to my fellow CFOs on this meeting today.
Wonderful. Thank you all. I think just a couple of questions, answers from the audience also was there. And thanks, Manish, for taking that leadership to respond to a few of the questions you've already responded. In terms of how to look at cash conservation, I think your response has been right, moving from CAPEX to OPEX. I think just as a last question for all of you, cash is king, cash conservation. We're talking about a lot of these, and we're also talking about building future. So how does that connect? You're keeping now, you're trying to conserve the cash, but are you also spending a lot of time and energy to plan for the future? And future could be 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line. How are you connecting these two together by navigating through this pandemic? Just quick one-liner if it is possible. I know it's a little difficult, but if you can just literally 10 seconds, please, all of you. Sunil, starting with you, 10 seconds, please. Sunil, you're on mute. You have to unmute yourself, sir.
I have already lost count. Okay, so Rakesh, first of all, I think we need to have quite a few scenarios as far as cash is concerned, because you very rightly said cash is king. So plan A or just a plan B is not going to work. We need to have quite a few scenarios given the uncertainty of the current situation. That is one. And the second thing is that rather than only focusing on how much cash can I generate or how much cash can I borrow from banks here and there, I think what is important is that we need to look at both the stakeholders. When I say both stakeholders, I mean, it is not that we have got only two stakeholders, but from a cash flow perspective, the customers as well as the vendors. So, I mean, our pricing policies, our discount structures, what can we do to be able to, get some more credit from the supplier if it is possible? What can we do to be able to get more cash from the customer if it is possible? Do we need a change in our policies and our practices, which we have been following for ages together? I mean, we also have to have a watchful eye on our customers. It is also possible that during the pandemic, our customers also face a situation where they are hard put on cash. So we will have to, double our governance. We will have to double our vision on them. And the same goes for our critical vendors, with whom we are dependent quite critically. So this question of yours is actually very, very vast, and unfortunately can't be answered in such a short span of time. But all I'm saying is have a few contingency plans and then revisit how you deal with your vendors and how you deal with your customers at both ends, so as to be able to get the best from a cash inflow and a cash outflow perspective.
Right. Thanks. Manish, you responded to that question already in the chat box, but if you want to respond to it once again, very briefly.
Yeah, so though 10 seconds is too short a time, but I will still try, Rakesh. What we have done, and each business will be an independent example of its own. No formula will be applicable for each and every business in the same manner. We are a growth-oriented business of Adani Enterprises Limited. But what we have done, if something was planned for 2020-21, we have postponed that CAPEX cycle for the next few years. But we know that Atmanirbhar Bharat is giving an impetus to the mining industry, and Prime Minister himself is taking so much keen interest. But that production and that CAPEX might be getting committed today, but not getting spent in 2021. It will get spent in 21-22 or 22-23. So we have postponed all CAPEX commitments which were earlier planned in 2020-21. We are not committing any new CAPEX which requires cash flow to be spent in 2021 or 21-22. Anything beyond that, welcome, and taking advantage of the growth. So very clear capex cycle can wait, because currently we have to see through whether the vaccine is coming in a September or a December, and how long this pandemic is going to create.
Thanks, Manish. Just a quick closing response on this one, Mr. Chandrasekhar.
Yeah, so I may not be able to speak specifically on cash management at IBM, but I can tell you that we're looking at this situation as an opportunity to go back to clients and see how best we can remain essential to them, right? And what it takes for us to be an essential service provider to our clients. And that's the direction that we've taken. And I believe that it will continue to work for us.
Certainly, absolutely. Fantastic. So great to hear perspective from you, all three of you. It was some interesting dimensions we could hear in the conversations. Now I'm already overshot on the time. As I finish this session, we are also finishing with this session. There's 2 days of finance leadership e-summit. Is the third finance leadership summit which we had spread over yesterday and today. I take this opportunity on behalf of Shared Services Forum to thank each of the panelist speakers who participated, joined, taken time out of their business busy schedule, shared their experience, perspectives. Thank each of these speakers. I also take the opportunity to thank the entire Shared Services Forum team at the back end, which is working to put this leadership summit together. Really thank you, all of you. And all those attendees who were able to take their time out amidst their busy schedule, logged into the session. I'm sure they would have walked away with some of important perspective which they can apply and contextualize in their environment is going to be important. I also take this opportunity to thank each of the panelists right now on the screen. I have Mr. Sunil Syal, thanks for your time. Mr. Manish Saxena, thank you for your time. And Mr. Chandrasekhar, thank you for your time. As I close, one most critical piece which I shared in the beginning of this session today, the first session as we started the day, that we will be releasing the research report which was shared earlier. And I request the backend SSF team to post in the chat box that link by which we can connect to the research report. I think it's already there in the chat box. You will find there's a link which is there. And if you click on the link, it will take you to the Shared Services Forum portal where this report is available for reading of all of you. And please do take time out to read this report. Provide us the feedback. We'll be very, very grateful with any feedback which we receive, because we want to continue with this mission of knowledge dissemination. And request all of you to take care, stay safe, difficult times. I know we are all running a race of a different kind. Please take care of yourself and stay safe. Thank you each one of you for joining today. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Have a great day and have a great time ahead.
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you. Stay